Hi, welcome to another ASMR video. Today, like with the past few videos, I'm going to be reading notes that I made on my phone. Every now and then, whenever I get random philosophical ideas, I make a note of them. A few things I want to mention before I get into the notes themselves. First of all, I actually watched my latest video on this channel to figure out what the last note I read out was, and realized that the video quality was very bad. Since then, I've got better lighting and I also have a better microphone, so I hope that the general quality of this video is a lot better than the other videos on this channel. Second of all, from watching that video, I noticed that I was mentioning how I seem to be talking about pain and discomfort a lot, and now that seems to, for some reason, be a recurring theme in these philosophical ideas that I have. I understand that first of all, a lot of you might not find that a very relaxing topic, but at the end of the day, I think I would prefer to keep it as authentic as possible when it comes to what's actually on my mind. The first note that I'm going to be reading out in this video also just happens to be about pain and discomfort. And in realizing that, I understand the potential of these videos becoming quite repetitive. I suppose if in this video I feel like I'm just talking about all the same things that I've already talked about in my other videos, then I suppose I would come to the conclusion that it's pointless doing this, and I'll need to find a different form of doing these kinds of ASMR videos. Maybe picking out specific topics in advance that I know I haven't really discussed before, or maybe even asking you guys for questions or ideas that I can ramble on about. There were other things I wanted to mention. It's currently 7:30 in the morning and I haven't slept yet, so I'm extremely tired right now. I wanted to make this video before I went to sleep, and I figured maybe me being so tired might actually help you sleep if I'm talking in a sleepy kind of way. I generally like to make these videos when I'm quite low energy anyway, so if I stumble on my words or stutter a lot, I think it might be due to my sleep deprivation. But let's just get into the notes for now, and if anything else comes to mind, I'll mention it later. Okay, so this is the first note. Pain and discomfort are inevitable in life. Hypothetically, you could achieve a life where bad things never happen, but most likely you will deal with pain and discomfort in life, maybe even consistently. And I think that it's okay to strive to building a life that is comfortable and painless if that's what makes you happy. But it's important to prepare yourself for the bad things that will inevitably happen. I do that by subjecting myself to pain and discomfort daily. I think of it as training my mind to be able to deal with the pain and discomfort, so that when something bad happens in life, I'm better at dealing with it. I think the best approach is to train yourself to be able to handle any pain in life, instead of trying to eliminate the pain. Another little thing I want to mention before I actually talk about the note is I'm also extremely hungry. So if you can hear my stomach grumbling and making strange noises, I apologize. Now, I must have written this note a very long time ago, because like I said, it's been over 3 months since my last video. However, I still stand by everything that I say here. I think that it's really interesting, again, if not depressing, for a lot of you to maybe consider for the first time and genuinely understand that pain and discomfort and generally quote unquote bad things are inevitable in life, and that they will happen to all of us, and that even if in some crazy hypothetical scenario there is a person out there that genuinely never feels what they consider to be pain in their life, it would be ridiculous to live your life with the expectation that you're never going to have pain. Therefore, the most logical thing to do is to expect that you will feel pain. And surely everybody would agree that the smartest thing to do in that scenario is to prepare yourself for that pain. In any other area of life, if you're expecting something to happen, you would, generally speaking, prepare yourself for whatever it is. And so I feel like you should take the same approach to pain, even though a lot of people don't like to think about the bad things that are just around the corner, because it might depress them in advance. I think the reality is that that's a necessary and uncomfortable first step to take. I think that there are lots of examples in other areas of life where no matter how extreme something is, whether it's good or bad, the more you expose yourself to that thing, the more normal it becomes. Of course, depending on what it is and who you are, will determine how long it takes for that thing to become normality. But eventually it will. There are people that live lives that are uncomprehendibly difficult for people like me, let's say, and yet to them it's completely normal. And there are also people who live lives that are uncomprehendibly amazing and well, let's say easy as the contrast, but to them that is normality. So I think that really what is normal is just a matter of course, what you're used to. And so even though it might feel uncomfortable at first to think about the inevitable pain or bad thing that's just around the corner in life, the more that you think about it, the more that you expose yourself to the thoughts of what it is that's going to happen and preparing yourself for it, the more normal it becomes. So even though it might feel depressing to at first understand that something horrible is going to happen to you at some point in life, the more you think about it, the more comfortable and normal it becomes. And when you understand that it's just a simple inevitability of life, then I think at that point you can start to take the emotions out of it and think about it more logically and understand that the best thing for you in that scenario is to prepare yourself. Now, of course, life's very unpredictable and you never know what's going to happen. So when I say prepare, what I mean is to, at least in my case, this is what I do. I try and do things that will train me for general pain and discomfort. There's nothing you can really do to prepare yourself for specific bad news or specific bad experiences that you're going to go through, because you have no idea what those experiences are going to be. I mentioned in this note that I subject myself to pain and discomfort on a daily basis. Sounds masochistic, but trust me, I hate pain. And it also sounds very dramatic. In reality, I only do very minor things on a daily basis. But I'm of the opinion that doing those minor things regularly is going to help in the long run. In terms of what I actually do on a daily basis, Again, it's nothing special. I work out. I think working out's amazing because it puts you in a position where you really have full control over how far it is you want to push yourself. You have full control over how much pain and discomfort you're going to subject yourself to. And it's a situation where you know that the more you push yourself, the more you're going to get out of it, the more you will benefit from it in the long run, which matches up exactly with the entire philosophy and reasoning behind doing that. I'd stretch every single day, even though I don't need to be flexible. I do it because it's another situation where I can force myself. I have 100% control over how much pain I want to be in that situation. I have cold showers every day, and the cold showers are a really good one. I have them first thing in the morning. Of course, I have a warm shower first to actually clean myself, and then while I'm there, nice and comfortable and cozy under the warm water, once I'm done cleaning myself, I'll turn it to the cold. And I have no choice but to stand there in this freezing cold water. And of course, it's the last thing that I want to do, but I do it because it's painful and it's uncomfortable. But I know that I can get through it. And it's like I'm telling myself at the very beginning of the day that I can handle that pain and discomfort and I can get through it. And when you're under the cold shower, not to act as though being in a cold shower is particularly difficult when you compare it to genuine hardships in life. Of course, it's on a micro scale, but there's nothing you can do to escape the cold water. You know, it's on your body and you can't escape that pain or discomfort. The only thing you can do is, in that moment, find a way to deal with it. You know, you can't stop the physical sensation of freezing, but you can find weird little tricks, psychologically speaking, to get through this inevitably painful and uncomfortable experience. So there are little things that I do to help with that. So I think that's a really good note that I still stand by, and it's something that you should try and constantly be aware of, that I should constantly be aware of. I don't like getting in the habit of telling people what they should do. Also, I just remembered what the other thing was. You can see my microphone right here. I tried to set up the camera and the microphone in a way so that you couldn't see the microphone, but there isn't really a way of doing that without having the microphone off to the side. But then, of course, that's not going to allow me to speak directly into it. So I hope that it's not too off-putting to see the microphone at the bottom of the screen. Let's move on to the second note. It doesn't matter what happens in life. All that matters is how you interpret it. Regardless of how good or bad you think your life is, you have 100% responsibility over how you think and feel in any given moment. I think that this is a very healthy attitude to have constantly in life. And it's one that a lot of people don't have. It's a difficult one to have. I think that so many people like to take any opportunity they can to pass the blame on to somebody other than themselves. I think sometimes, even in situations where you feel you have, let's say, a plethora of valid reasons as to why it's okay for you to feel the way you feel right now, as to why it's okay for you to think the way that you think right now, I still feel like there is rarely any benefit that can come from blaming anybody other. Sorry, I'm not sure if the noises my stomach is making is being picked up by the mic. Damn it, I lost my train of thought. You never have anything to gain from blaming anybody other than yourself for how you think and feel. Even if it's like a definitive truth that you think and feel a certain way because of somebody else, because you don't have anything to gain from blaming them for it, you might as well just take responsibility in that moment. My mind is going a bit blank to come up with good examples to really elaborate on that. But I feel like responsibility in general is a really important word to keep in mind. And there are many situations in life where people want to avoid the responsibility. But I think in the long run, it's always better for you if you're the type of person that takes responsibility for whatever situation you are in life. But then again, it is a very debatable point, because there are, of course, many scenarios in which you could be in a very, very bad situation in life, specifically because of the actions of someone other than yourself. A bit of a tricky one, that note. I think as like a general mindset, it's good to try and take responsibility in many different situations, but I don't think it's necessarily a bulletproof point, because there are many situations where that wouldn't be applicable. You know, if there was a drunk driver that hit me and I became paralyzed for the rest of my life because of his actions, it would be very, very difficult for me to find a way to take responsibility for that sort of situation, you know. But then again, I suppose the point isn't necessarily to take responsibility for the things that happen to you in life, but more so how you think and feel. Okay, well, that makes more sense to me now. Okay, so even if I did get hit by a drunk driver and I was paralyzed, and that had very, very obvious negative effects on me for the rest of my life, I could allow myself to become extremely depressed and angry and bitter for the rest of my life and say that it's all this drunk driver's fault. But in reality, do I really have anything to gain from that? Because I'm already paralyzed. It's already happened. It's in the past. There's nothing that's going to change the event that got me to this point. So really the healthiest and best thing for me in that situation is to just take responsibility for how I feel, and decide that if I am going to be depressed about being paralyzed, then it's my fault that I'm depressed. Yeah, okay. I went on a bit of a journey with that note, but okay, so I stand by that note then. I think that no matter what happens in life, even if it's a scenario where something bad has happened to you or you're in a bad situation and it's absolutely not your fault in any way, you still have more to gain from taking responsibility for how you feel or think in response to your situation. Okay, that's good. Let's move on to the next note. Life is a constant struggle between logic and emotions. I have to let my logic win as often as possible. It seems like in almost every scenario in life, the results of letting logic prevail are better than the results of letting emotions prevail. This idea of emotions versus logic is something that's kind of existed in my mind for a very long time. I've always considered myself a much less emotional person than the average person, just based on my personal experiences with other people. And I have found personally that living my life based on what makes logical sense to me, as opposed to reacting to how I happen to feel in any given moment, has just simply served me better. And And so in this note, I seem to be very adamant that I want to maintain that mentality. And I would say that I'm pretty much of the same mind right now. I think that emotions are inevitable. Emotions exist in me. I can feel happy and sad and angry and anxious, and I can feel most emotions. Like I said, I think I feel them a lot less and a lot less often than the average person, for whatever reason, which makes it easier for me to allow logic to prevail. But I still, of course, feel. And you could argue that emotions really are what give life purpose. You know, if I didn't feel anything, I wouldn't be able to be happy. And with all of these crazy, weird philosophical ideas that I have, really the core of it all comes down to being happy. Being happy is the reason why I have all of these thoughts. Being happy is why I ever started to think deeply like this. All of these notes where I'm talking about pain and discomfort and how to deal with the bad things of life, they are all so that I can be happy. Really, I would argue that the purpose of my life, if I have one, is simply to be happy as often as possible. And so emotions happen to be the root of why I do anything that I do. And yet here in this note, I'm talking about how I want to try and suppress my emotions. I think the issue with emotions is how volatile they can be. There are so many negative emotions. There seems to be such a variety of negative emotions and really only one positive emotion. So I think maybe when I say emotions in this note, I'm specifically referring to the negative ones. But yeah, I think that's really just me expressing my general mentality surrounding logic and emotions, and how they often have sort of polar opposite results in terms of how you are supposed to handle any given situation. I feel like there are so many situations where people will react or simply act in a certain way based specifically on how they feel in that moment. And then you have the cliche of later on, once those emotions have faded and you think about the situation logically, you realize that the way that you acted was not the way that you wish you had acted. And all of a sudden you're full of regret, and you would think something along the lines of, if I could go back, I would do it differently. And I have a feeling that that's a scenario that repeats itself a lot of the time for a lot of people. And being able to act based purely on what makes logical sense to you, as opposed to how you happen to feel in any given moment, is a very, very useful skill. Sorry, my camera cut out there. The difficulty of that situation is how difficulty comes, of course, in how hard it is to control your emotions. If you're in a bar and someone throws water on you or alcohol on you, you might just feel so angry that you feel as though you have no control over what you do. So maybe you start a bar fight, And after the bar fight, you're sitting in jail and you're thinking, that was a stupid decision, I should have just walked out. And even though maybe you have all of these concepts about pride and about how you had a right to do what you had to do because he crossed the line by throwing the drink on you, regardless of all of these different concepts and ideas you might have, if you think about it logically, you realize that the result of simply walking out the bar would have been much better for you than the result of attacking him because of what he did. So, very obvious point, I think, but an important one. I think I'll do one more note and we'll call it there for this video. I might film another video straight after this one just to continue it if I'm feeling ready. Okay, so this note is, it's possible that emotions are an evolutionary mechanism created by the mind to care about people so that we'd keep them alive or reproduce with them more often. For millions of years, humans' minds evolved to be as effective as possible at surviving and reproducing. But we got so good at it that we created a whole new world for ourselves. A world where all the things that we evolved to deal with are no longer the problems that we face. And now, the very tools that we use to somehow survive have become our problem. This was a really interesting idea. I must have heard somebody else talking about it, or maybe read an article that kind of sparked this idea to talk about things on an evolutionary level. Obviously, all of these notes, as you can tell, are sort of rooted in feelings and emotions. And like I said, that's kind of the only reason I ever think like this. I think like this so that I can become happy. So emotions and dealing with the difficulties of life are really the purpose of all of this. So I apologize if it comes across as repetitive, but it is what it is. So I think it's a very interesting idea. Of course, I don't know too much about the history of humankind, but I think it's an interesting theory at the very least to consider that the human species developed complex emotions as a tool to care about each other. If you love somebody, let's say love is an emotion, if you love somebody, then you will actively go out of your way to protect that person. And in a survival, wild scenario, protecting that person will keep them alive for longer, which means that you will be able to reproduce with them, or it means that you'll be able to stay as part of a pair or a group. Of course, it makes logical sense that a group of humans are going to have a much higher chance of survival than a single human. So there are obvious survival benefits to keeping other people alive, and if caring about them on some emotional level helps you achieve that, it motivates you to go out of your way to protect other people and keep them alive, then it makes sense that that might be an evolutionary tool that the mind developed. The same with things like fear, for example. If you're in a dangerous situation and it makes you scared, and that pumps your body full of adrenaline, which then means that you can think faster and do whatever you need to do to survive in that situation, then that would be an evolutionary development of the mind. And it will have taken thousands of years of humans going through this to develop these emotions. And if we're going to treat, in this scenario, emotions as a simple tool that the mind created to be able to survive in the wild, then it's interesting to see today, you could argue, the result of what it's like to have that tool exist in our minds but no longer be in the wild. We now live in what we call society and civilization. We don't have to worry about survival on a day-to-day basis. And we live in this really strange sort of world where we care about fame and money and reputation and, occupation, and, all of these things that would have been completely non-existent and irrelevant to humans for thousands of years, for most of the human species' existence. It's kind of crazy to think that we're really sort of in the very, very early phase of this new kind of era for humans, where survival is no longer our primary objective in life. And so I think a lot of times about depression and how it's so widespread and so easy for people to fall into, and how so many times it seems like there's not even really a real reason for it. Like, it's almost like people just naturally grow up and become depressed for no particular reason. And it happens so common that it seems almost unlikely that it would be a psychological defect, because it seems like depression is almost more common than not being depressed, And so that would make it not a defect. It would make it the more common outcome. It would mean that not being depressed would be the defect in a weird way. So this is an interesting little theory that would explain depression as well as any kind of emotion as kind of like an out of place tool. It's kind of like we were spending thousands of years using a shovel to dig dirt, and now all of a sudden we're living in a house that has laminate flooring, and we're still stood with the shovel and we're trying to crack the floor open. So it's kind of almost like emotions, or at least very specific emotions that maybe were useful in the wild, that maybe were useful for thousands of years of human evolution, are now in a way incompatible with the world that we've been able to create. But it's also funny that we've been able to create this world as a result of those emotions. Those emotions were vital to us being able to become as advanced as we are. And then the result of our advancement is the society that we live in. But the tools that we used to get here are now kind of killing us, It's a very interesting thought. But I think I'm going to leave it there. I'm pretty sure I've hit the 30-minute mark. I do feel very tired, so I might not have hit as many points as I usually would in this little self-reflecting session. But I hope that I've said enough to maybe spark some interest in you if you've listened all the way through. If you're one of the people that listens for what I say as opposed to just my voice, then let me know what you think about any of the points I made. I mentioned in the beginning of the video that what did I mention? That these might become quite repetitive. I think that maybe, I suppose it'd be best if you let me know whether or not this has been repetitive. Let me know whether or not I have said the same things in this video that I've pretty much said in other videos. And if that's the case, then maybe a good idea would be for you to leave a comment about some kind of philosophical idea that you've had. And if I can gather enough of those, then I can read out your notes instead of just mine. And I can sort of analyze them and let you know what I think about them. I think that would be an interesting way to deal with these videos in the future. I always say this in all my videos, but I am going to be trying to upload these as often as possible. I think that's all I have to say. So thank you for watching.